from the management side and the co-op side, Fannie Mae is a complete mystery. There's no consistency. There's no place to turn, and you could
No.
ask the same question to five lenders and get five different answers.
This is the Co-op and Condo Insider, the podcast dedicated to New York's cooperative and condominium communities. This is your trusted source for the latest insights, strategies, and stories shaping the world of shared housing. You will hear from the people who are leaders in this community, information and insights you will not hear anywhere else. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you're in the right place. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the host or any affiliated individuals or organizations.
Hello, and welcome to the Co-op and Condo Insider, where we explore the real-world issues facing co-op and condo communities across New York City with insight, expertise, and a healthy dose of straight talk. I'm your host, Jeffrey Maisel. I'm a co-op attorney and legal advisor to the President's Co-op and Condo Council. I'm thrilled to be joined by my co-host, Richard Solomon, a seasoned voice in public radio for over 20 years. Richard has taken his listeners around the world to meet experts, newsmakers, and the people making a real difference in our everyday lives. Richard, great to have you on the mic with us today.
It is always an honor and a privilege to be with you. Thank you.
All right. And today we have an incredible guest. And Richard, we're going to go to a place I don't think any of us have ever gone. It's called Manitoba. I would like to welcome our guest, Zahra Jafri. Before I introduce Zahra, I just want to say that the co-op and condo lending world suffered a tragic loss on Saturday when Kevin Cruikshank, the National Sales Strategy Support Manager for JP Morgan Chase, was in a tragic accident on his bicycle in Chinatown in New York City. I worked with Kevin for many years on many issues, and some of the issues we're actually going to be speaking about today. So we wish his family well, and may his memory be a blessing. So getting back to Zahra. Zahra is the leader and founder and visionary of Lynx Mortgage Bank. She started this business in 1989, and she has been working in real estate in the mortgage industry ever since. She is a past president of the New York Association of Mortgage Brokers, as well as the Empire State Mortgage Bankers Association, and currently serves as vice president of the Mortgage Bankers Association.
President.
Welcome aboard. Did I miss any presidents?
I'm president of the Mortgage Bankers Association.
Okay, so you have to update your website.
Sorry.
Just saying. All right. So why don't you tell us about Manitoba and how somebody goes from Manitoba to Post Avenue in Westbury? Because I can't say it's a common journey.
So I moved to New York when I got married because Mohammed's family was here and he was settling here. So that's how I came from Manitoba here. I've lived longer in New York than Manitoba. So
had you been? When was the first time you came to New York City?
oh my, every summer.
No, so
entire
did you have family here as a kid?
Friends, parents had family. So yes.
And why was your family in Manitoba, if you don't mind me asking?
Because my father in 1960 came from East Pakistan to do his master's and to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he stayed.
Was he a professor?
Professional electrical engineer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting story.
So he worked for Manitoba Hydro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do know in the work I do that hydroelectric power is coming to New York City from Quebec.
Yes, and my dad used to go to Quebec every year when they were building those plants.
Okay, well, eventually, fun fact for me and probably no one else, New York City is going to be getting 15 to 20% of their energy from the Quebec hydroelectric plant.
Wow.
All things being equal. So let's get into a little more background. How did you get started in mortgage banking?
So I got started in mortgage. Initially, I started out doing mortgage as a mortgage broker. I was working in a law firm my Muhammad Jafri's law firm and helping, just trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And his clients would call and say, I need a mortgage, or, he was representing them and they needed financing or help with financing. So I thought, oh, I could do that. So I started inquiring. I reached out to the bank, New York State Department. It's now financial services, but it used to be the banking department. And they told me, I had to work under a license for 1 year until I could put the registration into my own name. So I did that for 1 year, hooked up with Greenpoint and Citibank Power Express program, and that was it. And then just started walking up and down Middle Neck Road, visiting real estate offices.
We must have met along the way. I know.
We have. It's
I know you were
been a
next to the
long
subway.
run.
You were next to the subway on Middle Neck Road in Great Neck. That I remember.
So, but literally would just, go walk, say, hi, I'm doing mortgages, and send me your deals. And that's essentially how I got started.
So you started out as a mortgage
Broker and did
company.
that until 2003, and then applied to convert to banker in 2004, became Lynx Mortgage Bank. So we were Lynx Equities, then became Lynx Mortgage Inc., and then converted to Lynx Mortgage Bank in 2004. So I've been banking ever since.
All right, here's a question that not everyone, but people think about but never can ask. What is the difference between a mortgage broker and a mortgage banker?
So a mortgage broker essentially arranges loans through third parties. So they would, a person would apply with the broker, and then the broker then takes that loan and applies to 1, 2, 3 lenders, depending on the need. And they would, process the loan and do much of the work, and then close. A banker is, we are using our own funds. Like, I'm a direct lender licensed in New York, Florida, Texas. I'm not a depository institution. I'm a mortgage lender. So we're underwriting the file, we're taking the reps and warrants. A broker cannot make a credit decision. Bankers make the credit decision, and we close in our name. We use our own funds, much of which is warehouse lines. And then thereafter, once the loan closes, at some point, we are packaging up our pipelines and selling them to the secondary market.
So how did you make the decision? Because that's quite a leap.
So I very early when I started doing the brokering, I knew I wanted to get into the banking space. But it takes time. And then I was very active, as you mentioned. I was president of the New York Association of Mortgage Brokers, so I was very active in that space, lobbying, going to Washington, working on bills, just being an advocate for my industry. And I really saw that the industry was changing. It wasn't very broker friendly. It wasn't, I really thought that it made sense to bank in the long run. So I'll never forget, I came back from a trip to DC lobbying, and I said, you know what? I think the time is now. So we did it in 2004, and we all know what happened 4 years later.
Ouch.
Brokers really kind of got out there. Thankfully, they're back in the game. I mean, they're not as prevalent. There isn't a lot of third-party originations compared to previous years, but there's still a need. But for me, it just made more sense to move into that space.
So I know and we're talking about 2008 now, co-ops were not hit that hard because they vet their buyers more rigorously than banks do. And that was the first time I realized that, because when I started in this business, and in the 80s and 90s, co-op boards sometimes would say, oh, the bank approved them, we should too. But that gradually started changing. And now, since 2008, I think everyone's on the same page.
Right. And more than just being more rigorous, it was always a requirement to have minimum 20% down. There are very few buildings that will allow the 10% down. And having that additional equity, I think, especially during 2008, helped a lot because people weren't underwater for the most part. because
Were
we
you
went in
doing
with equity.
subprime loans?
We did not do them. We really stuck to basics, can a person afford to make the payment? Based our credit decisions on whether people could repay the loan, ability to repay, which is a key factor when you're looking at a mortgage. We never did the no income product, the 100% financing with 6% concessions. So essentially you were 106% financing. We looked to make sure there was equity. I mean, we did all the first time home buyer programs, FHA, 3.5% down, 5% down. If you're a veteran, we have all these programs, but end of the day, there has to be an ability for people to pay back their loans. We never allowed our
You
clients.
came out relatively clean or unscathed.
Yeah. I mean, we were suffering from general economic surroundings and what was going on in the market. But, we didn't have bad loans. We didn't have borrowers who were coming back to us and saying, you did this loan for us. We didn't. We were having borrowers come back and say, you told me not to do this loan and I did it anyway. Can you help me now? We're like,
Right.
yeah, sorry, no.
Well, I know sitting at the table as a real estate lawyer in those years, and I would see these 103%
Yeah.
loans. Again, as you said, no income verification. I once went to one closing, and I'm not even sure the borrower was the person she said she was. I mean,
Yeah. Well, that was a whole other problem too.
things got completely out of control,
Yes.
and I did notice prior to 2008, mortgage brokers started getting much more active
Mhm.
in a bad way, and
Yes. I
and
mean,
and
unfortunately,
lawyers, and it was everyone who did bad things were complicit. But I literally walked away from a table once because it was a broker, it was their title company, and the buyer didn't have the right ID, and the title company said, I'll notarize." And I said, I'm out of here. I'm
yeah,
not getting involved.
a lot of things went on, and unfortunately, the whole entire industry and country suffered as a result. And now new regulations are in place, and there's all sorts of requirements. I think long run, it's the best way to do it.
So what is the core business right now of Lynx? Is it commercial? Is it residential?
So, like I said, we're a residential, direct residential lender. The commercial division is we do broker only. Small mixed use I put on my balance sheet, but for the most part, it's all 1 to 4 family co-op and condo. Investment properties, second homes. Majority of my business is in New York, and I'd say about 25% of my business is co-ops and condos.
How did you build the co-op and condo side?
Just, being in my location, my office is in Great Neck. There's a lot of co-ops in Great Neck. And then many of my clients were working in Manhattan, buying apartments in Manhattan. So it was just, my business is all referral based. So really just having clients purchase co-ops and condos, and just organically through the years, management companies refer us, attorneys. So, they know that Lynx knows how to put together co-op applications, um, put our clients in position where we know whether they can buy in this building or not, what are the pros and cons of each building, just from experience. So it really just evolved over the years.
Is there
So-
is there
Go
a
ahead.
particular challenge that co-ops present that other kinds of housing doesn't?
So whenever anybody's purchasing a co-op, the biggest thing is, you're not buying real estate, you're buying shares of a corporation, right? And so that's the one thing I think sometimes people have to understand. And then with that, there's 3 sets of approvals. So the borrower, if getting a mortgage, needs to be approved by the lender, by Lynx, hopefully. And then they have to get approved by the co-op board. But then the building's financials also need to be approved by the lender. And that especially in recent times, the last 2 years, has become very strict and very time consuming. And one of the biggest challenges with co-ops today is just the management companies not complying with all the updated co-op and condo requirements that Fannie and Freddie have put into place. So
I will tell you from sort of the other side, and we call this the Co-op and Condo Insider, and we really appreciate your insight today because from the management side and the co-op side, Fannie Mae is a complete mystery, and
like,
and there's no consistency, there's no place to turn, and you could
no,
ask the same question to five lenders and get five different answers.
yeah.
What are some key issues that co-ops face with Fannie Mae compliance today? What is Fannie Mae compliance? Let's explain what
So,
Fannie Mae
so
does.
Fannie Mae sets out a set of regulations that we have to abide by for every loan, whether it's a co-op or a condo.
Fannie
So,
Mae guarantees the loan. Is that
well,
right?
they are regulators and they ultimately service the loan. So if a loan isn't going to be Fannie Mae comply with Fannie Mae guidelines, then it won't get purchased by any investor.
And is that a portfolio loan?
Then it becomes a portfolio loan, and those are more expensive for a consumer, right? So, but for just to first, the borrower needs to comply with Fannie Mae guidelines. So income, assets, credit all have to fit into the regs that are set forth. For co-op and condos, and I'll just specifically talk for now about co-ops, like they have to have 2 years financials without showing losses. We have to have a questionnaire completed, which asks about, 4 pages of information pertaining to occupancy, insurance requirements, reserves, how many units are owned by sponsors. So, some of the biggest challenges we have today is that buildings do not have enough money in reserves. They
What is, what's a recommended amount, or what is the
Well, yeah, they have to have
regulatory amount?
what is required is 10% reserve of the overall maintenance
So,
required.
so if the annual maintenance is $1 million,
Yeah, they have to have,
they have to have $100,000.
correct.
And what if
And
they,
oddly enough, many co-op buildings do not have it, so, the questionnaire will ask about the ground lease. The ground lease has to exceed the term of the loan plus 5 years. So Jeff, we went through many deals where ground leases were expiring within 25 years of today, so people couldn't get a 30-year fixed mortgage.
which is still a big problem with many co-ops,
Yes,
and that'll be a separate episode.
right. So leaseholds, the status of the project, how many units are owned by a sponsor. Sponsors can't own more than a specific percentage.
What is that percentage?
It depends on how many units. So like, let's say that there's 5 to 20 units. The sponsor can't own more than 2 units. So it's like a percentage based off the number of units that are held.
I once had a situation. My client was buying in a building in Manhattan, and one of the hospitals was the sponsor, and they
Yeah. So
owned
that was,
they,
was
they owned a
that a
large
condo?
percentage.
Was the hospital a condo?
I don't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah, these were condos, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and they rented them out to doctors, and the loan got denied. I'm like, only the federal government can figure out
Yeah.
a way to deny the easiest loan ever.
Yep. That's really so 10% of reserves. So it's Fannie Mae typically expects 10% of annual budget allocated to reserves for future capital expenditures. And then operating losses over the last 2 years has been tremendous. And that's primarily because of after that building in Florida collapsed, co-ops are now required to do engineers inspections and have reports pertaining to critical repairs or deferred maintenance. And many, many buildings have identified that through inspections that their buildings are in need of much repair and much is critical. And there's tremendous deferred maintenance in much of these buildings. So up due to them having to put in these repairs, because specifically in the city of New York where the repairs weren't done, they're getting violations. So they've drained their bank accounts fixing the properties. And now they're showing losses for 2 years in a row to bring their buildings up to par.
Do you find there are more buildings out of compliance with
Yes.
Fannie Mae than there used to be?
Yes.
Is this a pervasive problem?
Yes.
So how does this compare to, let's say, 10 years ago?
So 10 years ago, we didn't have as strict of a reserve requirement. So that's a hard question for me to answer. But, we could lend in buildings if there was pending litigation, as long as we got an attorney opinion letter that said, this lawsuit is frivolous, etc. But now we really can't get letters like that anymore. Because
so from perspective of the co-op, the bar keeps getting higher and higher.
correct.
So
It does. But our biggest challenge today is getting the boards, management companies to give us a copy of the engineer's inspection, which we are required to have. And the reason for this is they want to see in writing that there's no critical repair or the building has not been deemed unsafe.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A place like Clearview Gardens, for example, has multiple corporations. So do you look at all of Clearview, or do
We
you
have to.
So even if you're buying into, say, the first corporation of Clearview, do you have to look at all the other things to see if there's a problem?
Well, it's going to depend that the garage is the common space, and they have the garage, if I'm not mistaken, under a separate corporation.
no, the garages are
Same building?
Yeah,
they're garden apartments.
yeah. I
Right.
think
So in that
five
instance,
different corporations.
no, we would just go by the corporation for that building. Yeah,
So basically, the rules of the game have changed,
correct. So
and it's hurting a lot of co-ops and condos.
yeah, like one of the other things you have to ask, special assessments. Are there any special assessments? And what are the special assessments for? And the special assessments have been put in place for most buildings to either fund the work that needs to be done or recover the fund that was now showing losses, like to build back the reserves and their bank accounts. Let's say a building is showing losses for 2 years in a row. As long as we see that a special assessment was put in and that the building will start to recover in 2026, then most likely we'll get a Fannie Mae approval for the building.
So is there a way to get an exception to
You can apply for waivers. Haven't had a waiver in over a year for critical repair and or reserve requirements.
Well,
so how would a building know if they're deemed ineligible? Can they check themselves, or does it
They
have
can
to be...
check themselves. If a building has active violations on the DOB site, and those violations are connected to any type of critical repair and or deferred maintenance, that building, or if they have an evacuation notice for repair, they're not getting a mortgage, Fannie Mae mortgage right now until that's resolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, my experience has been, that there's a lot of violations that in reality are relatively minor, but it can be deemed a hazardous or dangerous condition.
Right.
Including late filing on local law 11 facade.
That's a huge one. But you know what? One of the things that we have to remember is just because something becomes ineligible for financing doesn't mean it stays there. We just resubmit the paperwork once things have all been rectified. And once things are rectified, they come off the list. They come back onto the good list.
In the meantime, lives are ruined.
Yes.
I think I'm being a little dramatic, but I'm allowed.
One of the things we've tried to do is educate management companies with the new requirements and what's required, and then hope that the management companies will take that information and distribute it to all their project managers and all of their boards so that they, when they're having their board meetings, make proper voting decisions to keep their buildings in compliance so that they don't have to face what many buildings are facing today. The management company is hired by the board. The management company needs to educate the board, and then the board needs to make the proper decision to protect the shareholders. And I just don't see that happening. I still get, no, we won't give you the engineer's inspection. We've never had to do this before. Well, rules change. Now you do.
Well, what if there is no inspection, which is very often the case?
Then that's even worse because every building in New York City is required to do one now.
I see.
And within 5 years.
So it's a tremendous challenge.
Every building. Another big challenge we have is most buildings' financials expire, June 30th. Once a set of financials expire, the buildings, their approval status falls out of approval status. So in order to get the building back approved status, we need 2024 financials, which if 2023 financials are expiring June of 2024, why are we not, we're already 2 weeks into July, at say about 50% of our transactions do not have their updated financials ready yet.
Financials are notoriously late.
Yeah. But that doesn't help in this environment, right?
No, I'm saying, just what I'm gathering from this conversation is Fannie Mae has completely upped their game in terms of standards.
Correct.
And the co-op and condo world that we know in New York City is slow to adapt. Not always because they don't want to, but they might not have the money. Or again, if there's a violation on the building, New York City, removing a violation is sometimes a lot harder than getting it.
Yeah.
So, and they are subject to numerous unfunded mandates. The DOB Department of Buildings is more aggressive than ever.
Absolutely.
And it's become a much tougher environment, both in terms of New York City regulations and, of course, mortgage compliance.
Just in like, for example, insurance, now you have to have full replacement cost. Most buildings do not have sufficient insurance. They don't have a sufficient amount of E&O or, crime insurance for their board and their management companies.
Umbrella.
Yeah, and then they don't have an inflation guard. That's the new thing, that all buildings are required to have an inflation guard on top of their insurance. Now, yeah, it's costly. It costs money. But when you do have situations where buildings have collapsed in, Florida, and then we just had a garage collapse in New York City a year ago, you've got buildings that the damage was so severe due to deferred maintenance that they're evacuated 2-3 floors, and now the insurance company has to cover the cost to put those people into hotels until the work can be completed and they can go back into their properties. They need insurance.
You see, my perspective is that those are two exceptional circumstances. Surfside Condo was built on very swampy, soft earth, and Manhattan is bedrock. And the garage on Ann Street in New York City, just completely.
No, I agree.
Overloaded the garage. I'll give an example. Now, New York City co-ops and condos garages are subject to inspection, annual or biannual inspection, very expensive to comply with. Including in that are garages that are on the ground floor of a building, which makes no sense and also, like, as we were talking about, a place like Clearview Gardens where they're separate structures, but those are also now subject to New York City inspections.
Well, that's a big one, structural safety.
Well, I find, my experience too has been the buildings are adapting. bigger issue or the more difficult is um, that the co-ops can't directly deal with Fannie Mae. It's got to go through lenders, and it's like a bad game of telephone, the old game telephone.
Yeah.
And
It is a
it's
very
not,
frustrating process. That
yeah,
is true.
and there's not very good communication. And I did have the experience where we had to engage an elected official, Tom Swazi, a Congress member, on an issue where Fannie Mae was just they were wrong.
Yeah, they
listened
reported
to,
on the wrong building. We were involved, remember?
yeah. So we did get a personal meeting. They were very nice. Here's an organization I can never get one person to ever return my call or anything or even identify themselves. And we had a Zoom meeting. We had like 20 of them on the meeting. So,
Yeah.
so all right. Now that we've depressed everybody about the state of the mortgage market,
No, it's not that bad.
I know. I
It's a
have,
cumbersome process, right? But the thing is, you really also have to understand how it works. So when we take on a co-op transaction, we look ahead of time and see, when are all the documents expiring? How long are they good for? We get the insurance immediately. And we know right away, like I try to inform all of my management companies of what's required for specific buildings if I know that there's a specific issue. Then it's up to the board. If they choose not to do it, then the shareholders won't be able to sell to somebody who needs a mortgage for
well, one of the reasons we invited you, Zara, is obviously for your expertise, but also having dealt with you directly,
thank you.
and the lender has become a critical part of this process now, where things that, like we said, used to be cookie cutter aren't. So you do
Mhm.
need expertise from the lending side to help navigate a building's eligibility or helping them get an exception. All right. So, Rich, do you have the
I have the lightning round, but I want to go off script if that's
go
okay.
off script? Rich loves to jam.
I love to. All right, so you're from Westbury. So which venue do you like better, the Space or the Westbury Music Fair? Or which is your favorite concert from either one in recent times?
I haven't gone to the space in a while, so option 2.
All right.
I saw right before he died. I saw Don Rickles
Nice.
Oh, that
with
must
my
have been
dad at the Westbury Music Fair. I high fived him on the way down.
most surprising thing about working in mortgage banking that the ordinary person would not guess.
How much time, how many physical hours go into a transaction?
That's very true. People
know,
think
They
things just
underestimate.
happen. Yeah,
People see that fee and they go, "What did they do?"
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, exactly.
I know.
What would you say is a really important piece of advice for co-op members to have that they don't necessarily know right now that they should know?
I think they should know what the actual current situation is pertaining to deferred maintenance and the safety and soundness of their buildings.
Okay, and the final question is, if you had to go on a dream vacation, where would you go?
And you
And
can't
would it
say
involve
Manitoba.
would it and would it involve a co-op?
Co-op. I would Airbnb a co-op, but you're not allowed to Airbnb co-ops. No.
No,
Dream vacation, Ireland? I don't know.
we'll say Ireland.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have just being able to go on vacations a dream right now. So no.
Right. With emails and cell phones and Zoom meetings.
And there's no
such thing
specific
as a
place I would say,
vacation.
oh my God, I would love to go there. Just whatever makes sense.
I got one last easy question. Ready? Favorite podcast?
This one.
There you go. All right.
Thank you
Any
for the
final?
opportunity, Jeff. Rich, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh,
Great
I
to meet
really
you.
enjoy
all
being
right.
able to speak about our challenges and how to move forward in this
we
crazy
we
environment.
we appreciate it. Anybody listening, you can go on the Lynx Mortgage website to learn more about Fannie Mae compliance and any questions you may have. Of course, you can contact Zahra or anyone else there
Mhm.
who handles these kinds of issues. As far as we're concerned, we're out of time. I want to thank Rich for joining me, and
Thanks,
we look forward to our next episode, which we're going to have another fascinating guest and interesting topic. Again, thank you very much, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Co-op and Condo Insider. We hope you found today's conversation informative and insightful. Don't forget to subscribe. We're available on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, stay informed.